Millennials are the most financially screwed generation in history. After all, mortgage rates are at their most expensive level since 2001, food prices are rising at the fastest rate in decades, and the cost of living has gotten so high that 40% of Gen Z now works multiple jobs. Fortunately though, there is a solution and a strategy for anyone who wants to escape the hamster wheel and build their wealth, even when you're starting out with nothing. And better yet, it's not consisting of the generic,
work hard, save at least 10% of your income, drive a used car, and always smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm.
Let me take you back to 1985. That's the last time I walked out of those gates. I was 16 years old, I was tall, skinny, and I had ginger hair. And I was broke, unfortunately. But I knew I wanted to make my mark on the world, and there was no way I could do that sitting in lessons, learning about things I wasn't interested in.
But when I was a teen, my main side hustle was selling candy and cans of soda to all the other kids in the playground. On the weekend, I would also go fishing and catch hundreds of mackerel, which I sold around the neighbourhood. I remember knocking on every single door possible. I was offering a great deal, 10 fish for $1, but unfortunately no one wanted 10 fish. So I was forced to go back to the drawing board and restructure my business with a new strategy. I decided from now on I'll be selling 5 fish for $1, and I was shocked by the results. Everyone wanted some. Looking back now, these years were so important as I was practicing some of the most important life skills out there, sales and confidence. Without these skills, I don't think I'd have been able to achieve success in later life. So if you just take one thing from this video, then it should be to start honing your sales skills and being confident. If anyone wanted to help install this beautiful staircase at a customer's house, I jumped at the chance. It was one of the most impressive houses that I'd ever seen. It had everything. I'm talking marble floors, chandeliers, a private swimming pool, and a garage full of beautiful sports cars. It was my dream house. I started daydreaming and adding up how many years it would take me to earn enough money to buy a place like this, and I got gradually more and more demoralized, as even with all my side hustles, I realized I still would never have enough money. It was so close, but just so far at the same time, and I felt there was really nothing more I could do to achieve it. I was absolutely exhausted, physically and mentally. I was working every hour of every day. While installing the staircase, I would often look out of the window and see the owner relaxing in the garden or going off to play golf, and I really couldn't understand how this guy managed to have the life that he wanted and go and have fun whenever he wished. So I had to ask him a few questions, and he told me all about how running his business gave him the ability to make money while he slept. This is when I first discovered passive income. I'd never thought this was really possible for me, as school had only ever taught me one way of making money, and that was working a normal job. This concept of making passive income was so alien to me, but it really got the wheels turning in my mind. If this was a normal guy and he was able to do all this, then I was pretty sure that I could do it too. I started thinking back to my school years and selling those fish. That was my first real experience of running a small business, and I'd loved every second of it, from sourcing to selling the product.
Like, let's be real, if you want to build your wealth really fast, you're probably not going to get there with a traditional job, unless that job pays you an exorbitant amount of money, or you're really good at call options or OnlyFans. So instead, my recommendation is this: pick a job or a career that's not dependent on how many hours you work. For me, I did this when I was working as a real estate agent. It didn't matter if I worked 2 hours or 200 hours. If I didn't sell a house, I wasn't getting paid. Now personally, if it were up to me, I think something like sales is probably one of the most underrated careers out there. It's usually a stepping stone to making a lot more money. It'll teach you everything you need to know about time management and customer service, and it'll usually provide the funding for you to do almost anything else you want to do later in life. For example, I have an upcoming video that documents people who work in solar sales and make almost $1 million a year. And if you want to see a sneak peek of that, here's what they had to say.
You know, every time you knock a door, whether or not they answer, they say no or yes, you're making $54, right? And then when they're going out in the field, they just imagine $54 is hanging on every doorknob, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you don't get paid for the yes, right? We're getting paid for the no.
Or I guess you could just work for UPS, because they're paying $170,000 a year. That's a ton of money. Anyway, overall, I would say that most people you hear about who make a ton of money when they're young do so by starting their own business. And best of all, when it comes to doing this, pretty much everything you need to know is already on YouTube for free. And learning how to be self-sufficient to find the answers yourself is going to help you tremendously no matter what you decide to do in your life.
Kickstarting passive income is certainly not an easy thing to do, but the idea is that you can do something once, like setting up a business or investing some money, and then earn from it even when you're not working. Of course, this requires some maintenance, but in my opinion, it's a better way to make money than working a 9-to-5 job if you want to be successful when you're younger. Passive income is by no means easy. There can be a lot of setbacks along the way, but if you stay focused, then opportunities will present themselves. As if by magic, one day I heard some great news that my friend wanted to sell Model World. I'd visited a few times and noticed that he wasn't giving it the attention it needed. It had huge potential, but his passions were not in the business. I knew I needed to buy the shop and get my dreams back on track. This was the opportunity that I'd been preparing myself for, and I wasn't going to let it slip through my fingers again. I had a little bit of money behind me, but it still wasn't going to be enough. Nowhere near enough, but I'd built up a good credit score, so I thought, I know what, I'll leverage the money I had and see if I can get a bank loan.
Whether you like it or not, those three numbers dictate whether or not you'll get an apartment, get a low interest rate when you buy a house, leverage your money, or sometimes even get a job. So if you want a step-by-step guide on how you can do exactly that, it's this easy. First, if you have no credit history whatsoever, go and apply for something like a Discover It secured card. They'll just ask you to put down a deposit, usually a few $100s, that they'll give you back in about 8 months, and then from there, all you'll need to do is get in the habit of putting a few small, normal charges on the card every single month, and then paying it off in full on time. It's that easy. Now, alternatively, if you don't want to use a credit card to do this, just Google debit cards that build your credit, and voila, there's so many options out there. The second, you should also sign up for a free credit monitoring software like Credit Karma, Credit Sesame, or Experian. This is going to help you monitor your credit score on a regular basis for the cost of nothing, and eventually you can watch it increase over time, for free. There's really no downside of doing this. You should just do it. Then third, after 6 months of doing that, open up another credit card, like the Bank of America Cash Rewards card, the Wells Fargo Active Cash card, or a Chase Freedom card. That's because the more on-time payments you have, the higher your score is going to be. So do the same thing as before. Open up the new credit card, put a few small charges on it, and then pay it off each month in full by the time it's due. Then fourth, after about 12 months of doing that, you could open up your first charge card, like the American Express Gold. Now this one does have an annual fee, but it has so many perks and features that pay for itself many times over. And because it doesn't technically have a limit, it's not going to report credit utilization, which is going to push your score up even higher. And finally, fifth, after about 18 months of doing this, you should have a credit score between 700 and 750, which will generally get you the lowest interest rates anytime you apply for financing.
Preparation and resilience meets opportunity. You never know when your next stroke of luck is around the corner. When it seems to be going amazingly well, you can start to get a little complacent, as it seems like nothing can stand in your way. This is really dangerous as you stop innovating and take your eye off the ball. I was so heavily focused on one stream of income from my retail shops that when internet shopping struck, I was completely taken by surprise. It was really sink or swim. Everyone I knew was getting wiped out of business, and I knew it was only a matter of time before that was going to happen to me if I didn't quickly adapt to the times. Luckily, I had a little longer than most, as I'd been investing in the stock market and real estate from a young age. If I didn't have these assets, then I would have probably gone bankrupt.
This is what happens when you're making $40,000 a year, you're paying all your bills, no complaints, you're getting by, but then you get a promotion to $60,000. All of a sudden, you then reward yourself with maybe a slightly nicer place, a slightly nicer car, maybe start going out for meals a little bit more often. Nothing big, but just small things. But then a year or two later, you start making $90,000 a year. All of a sudden, you want to upgrade your apartment, or maybe you want to buy a Tesla Model X, because that's what everyone drives when you make $90,000 a year. I think you could probably see where this is going. I've seen so many situations where people are making $150,000 a year and not able to save any extra money than they were when they were making $40,000 a year, despite them making 4 times more money. And if you don't believe me, nearly half of people making over $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. Personally, I found one of the best ways to overcome this is that anytime you make any additional money, pretend it doesn't exist, live on the exact same amount as you were before, and invest the difference immediately. In this case, if you're making $40,000 and you get a raise to $60,000, well, great, now you could save an extra $20,000. Then from there, if you make $100,000, just keep your lifestyle the exact same as when you're making $40,000 and save all the difference. The way I see it, this is not a time for you to reward yourself for making more money. Instead, the reward is that your money now works for you, not the other way around. Or I guess you could just do what I do, which is work so much that you don't have time to spend the money. That also helps. Okay, in all seriousness, here's the way I think of it. If I want to buy something, I just figure out how much I need invested so that my investments pay for it. For example, if I want to spend $100 a week eating out at restaurants, I know that I'll have to have $130,000 invested to be able to pay for it. This way, I know that whatever I purchase or spend is sustainable no matter what happens to my income. Throughout my entire 20s, I lived by the motto that I would invest my money to pay for the things that I wanted, and then I would save up for the specific investments, not the thing itself. I promise that by thinking this way, it's going to help change the way that you see money.
One of the most important things I've learned from my experience is that there is less risk in stepping out of your comfort zone and adapting than there is in not taking any risk at all. If you've been considering quitting your job, then know this: if you've got the right plan and the right motivation, you have as much chance of success as anyone else. You don't have to come from a rich family. You don't have to have lots of connections. The barriers to entering the business world have never been this low. All you need is a computer, some brains, that certainly helps, and an internet connection to make your first bit of startup money.
Who knows, one day you could be sitting in the boss's seat behind the boss's desk. And this is literally the boss's desk. I was once sitting just where you are now, having my interview to become a carpenter. When that firm went into receivership and it came up for auction, I went straight down there and I bought this desk.